It's time, baby. Overwatch League action is finally coming back to us in a bit less than 24 hours with the Western Pro-Am tournament set to begin. Now, a lot of stuff is happening really fast, and not all of the information has been clearly presented. When's it gonna happen? Where? Who's playing? What's the format? Can any contenders teams even win a game? Who ends up winning the whole thing? It's a lot to process, but that's what I'm here to help you with. Here is everything you need to know about the 2023 Overwatch League Western Pro-Am with some brief analysis and predictions at the end of this video. For starters, the Overwatch League Western Pro-Am will be a 3-week event starting on March 23rd at 1 p.m. Pacific time. 1 p.m. Pacific will be the start time for every single day for player convenience, so be sure to plan accordingly if you want to watch. You may not have heard since they didn't actually say it until today, but the event will be streamed on the Overwatch League YouTube channel. Lots of people probably don't know still, so be sure to spread the word. In terms of formatting, all 13 North American Overwatch League teams will be competing along with 7 contenders rosters. The teams are going to be separated into 4 groups of 5. The group stage will consist of 2 weeks of round-robin gameplay, with 2 teams advancing from each group to compete in a single elimination 8-team tournament in the final week. The contenders teams joining the tournament are as follows: Maryville Saints, Trick Room, Redbird Esports, Timeless, Wisp, Twisted Minds, and Team Peps from NA, Europe, and the Middle East respectively. These teams qualified from a gauntlet of over 200 teams, so congrats to all of them for this amazing achievement and opportunity. I'll go more into detail on their rosters and what to expect later on in the video. For now, here's what the groups are. These groups were made with the intention of being as even as possible. Things like rankings from last year were largely used to help establish it. And as you can see, every group except for B has 2 contenders teams. But B pretty much has 3 when you think about it, just not officially. The Valiant and Eternal are essentially contenders rosters themselves, so things could be pretty even between those 3. A few of these groups could get pretty interesting when it comes to who qualifies. There's going to be obvious favorites, and it's clear where contenders teams will and will not get their wins, but there could be some fun surprises at the very least, and at bare minimum, we'll get a fun preview to see how everybody's doing 1 month before the start of the regular season. It's a good way to look forward to what's next, while also ensuring that the contenders players get a good bit of guaranteed time in the spotlight. It's set up in a pretty good way, and my only wish is that they started doing something like this sooner. In terms of other formatting, the seeding for the 8-team tournament likely comes down to things like record and map differential. Speaking of maps, here's the map pool for this event. The one thing worth pointing out is the 2 newest maps in the game will be in the pool, and it'll be the first time we see them at the Overwatch League level, so it'll be fun to see how teams strategize on it. Now let's dive into the tournament itself. The teams, what the expectations are, my general predictions, let's go over all of it. Looking into the contenders teams that we discussed earlier, starting with the Maryville Saints, they have quite a few familiar names that you may have already seen or have heard of in the past, such as King, former flex DPS of the Vancouver Titans, False, former tank of the Vancouver Titans, Mikey, former tank of the San Francisco Shock last year. A lot of people are also pretty familiar with the DPS player Tree. The Saints ended up finishing first place in the Pro-Am qualifiers for North America, and it's very well deserved to see them here. They did very well in the event. They have a lot of likable players, a lot of experienced players, a lot of young talent. They should be one of the better teams in this event that's representing Tier 2. And I'd argue they have the best chance out of any of the Tier 2 teams to make it out of the group stage potentially, as they're in Group B, which is relatively weak. Atlanta Reign and London Spitfire will be pretty tough to take down, but there's a lot of reason to believe they could defeat both the LA Valiant and Vegas Eternal, who are absolutely at their skill level. So if there's one team that I think you really need to look out for to potentially make it out of a group, it's definitely Maryville. The team to come in second place in the NA qualifiers was Trick Room, who actually don't have any former Overwatch League players on their team, but they still made it this far. Very awesome to see a lot of new faces get here. They're highlighted by a pretty solid tank player in Infected, amongst a couple of other interesting shining stars in the making. But I'm a bit worried about them, as the group they're in is a bit tougher, highlighted by teams like the Shock and Mayhem and even the Vancouver Titans. So their road to making it out of the group stage is a lot harder compared to the Saints, but let's see what they can do. You never really know. We follow it up with Redbird Esports, a pretty familiar face. They've been rather dominant in North American contenders the last couple of years. They'll be a part of Group D, along with teams such as the Outlaws, alexyOWL, and Toronto Defiant. Redbird actually only finished third in the qualifiers, which was a little surprising considering their dominance over the years. Their team looks a bit different compared to their peak dominance, but there are some pretty solid players. Gig, former OWL player, is here. Then you have Grathen, a solid DPS player at the flex role. Moving Fish 7, who was originally rumored to make OWL, but he never did. There's some good, solid pieces here, and they're going to be competitive. They're going to give it their all. And I think if they were to maybe overcome Toronto Defiant, let's say, there's a slight possibility they can make it out of the groups. You don't expect much against the Houston Outlaws, let's say, but New York are very beatable, Twisted Minds are beatable. It's just if they could manage to conquer a solid team like Toronto, who are so solid and have such great synergy. Next up, we have the 4th place NA qualifying team, which is Timeless, and they're highlighted by just one lone former OWL player in Wub, but they also have a couple of other familiar faces, such as Kuffa, a Australian tank player who's been around the scene for a couple of years now, and he's always been a reliable and solid guy that you can count on. He was rumored to be an OWL at one point during this offseason, but I guess it fell through. Good player nonetheless, though, and I'm happy to see him competing at this level. And what I like about Timeless is they're a pretty diverse team. They have people from all sorts of different countries like Australia, Japan, Canada, etc. And they have backups at every position, which makes them a pretty deep roster. However, they are going to be in Group A, which makes their lives pretty difficult. Teams like the Shock and Mayhem are really terrifying to deal with. And even Trick Room, I mean, they did better than them in the qualifiers, so that'll be a challenge for them to overcome too. They'll be an underdog. And finally, the 5th place NA qualifying team is Wisp, and just like Trick Room, they have absolutely zero OWL experience on their team. But they do have some fun faces, such as Chopper, and my personal favorite, Chikaro19, someone who I honestly was kind of hoping would make OWL this year, but that didn't really end up coming true, sadly. But he's just a really skilled player. He's been grinding for many years now. Great Winston and Rhine player. Really smart guy. Really strong mechanically. Probably going to be one of the leaders of this team and one of their carries, and someone that you should definitely be on the lookout for to maybe make the league in the future. They'll be a part of Group C alongside teams such as Boston Uprising, LA Gladiators, Team Peps, and the Washington Justice. Not the hardest group, I'd say, but it's not exactly easy either. If they could somehow overcome the LA Gladiators, then maybe there's a chance for them. I think Team Peps and Washington Justice are both relatively beatable, but it's asking for a lot. Also, side note, really excited to watch the Boston Uprising in action. They could be a lot of fun this season, could be a really good team. This is a great preview to see what they've got and to watch people like Birdring take the stage again. That does it for your North American representation, so now let's quickly get into the European/Middle Eastern teams to make it. So first up, we have our 1st place finisher, Twisted Minds. And they're an interesting group that are pretty mysterious. They are largely representing Saudi Arabian Overwatch. Saudi Arabian Overwatch is honestly kind of popular for those who don't know. It's relatively well supported, and a lot of people love the competition over there, not just the Saudi Arabian players. We've seen people from all over the world go to compete in those tournaments, such as Kareev and Hadi. It's a pretty big deal. Honestly, Saudi Arabian Overwatch is hella slept on. They have some really talented players over there. The competition is great, and the team they're rocking with the exception of one player, player, that being Slay from Denmark, is all Saudi Arabian, and it's highlighted by guys such as KSA, our boy, former Vancouver Titans tank player, and another guy that's been receiving a lot of hype, the hitscan player named Courts. They made it all the way through the European qualifiers. They were the #1 team. These guys are no joke, and they beat everyone pretty convincingly too. I mean, they didn't drop any games. They got all the way through the upper bracket. Team Peps took them to like 6 maps in the grand final, but that's as far as they got pushed. They're a good team with underrated talent. They're smart. They know what they're doing, they have a high skill ceiling, and something that I appreciate about them as a former Valiant fan is that they're coached by Kareev. All that experience and knowledge that he brings to the table and his general relationship with the Saudi Arabian players makes him such an ideal person to help push them to their absolute limits and help them improve at a pretty rapid rate. This team is a threat. Like, honestly, I could see them taking down Redbird and NYXL in Group D. I don't know about Toronto Defiant, maybe that's a bit of a stretch, but top 3 may be something that they can obtain. And last but certainly not least, the 7th team is Team Peps, and while they did finish 2nd place in their qualifier, they're not to be underlooked either. They're extremely talented. They did lose a couple of guys to the Washington Justice and all during this offseason, but they have rebuilt and they still have a lot of former Overwatch League players on their squad. It's highlighted by guys like Hybrid and Naga DPS, Molth at tank who came out of retirement, and Kelix at support. And someone else that you need to look out for is karandops. Sorry if I mispronounced his name, but he kind of like with Jakaro's been in the scene for a while. He's just a solid overall tank player out of the Netherlands. Man knows what he's doing on things like Rhine and Winston. Really smart and strong player mechanically. He's been looking to get into OWL for a long time. This is a great opportunity for him to shine in the spotlight. I think he's going to do great. This team in general is just good. They have a lot of the experience and leadership that you're looking for and a lot of the talent. And with them in a group like Group C, there's maybe some room for them to make some noise, as Washington Justice and Wisp are both pretty beatable. I've heard LA Gladiators haven't done that well in scrims for what it's worth, so maybe there's a chance they could give them a run for their money. I'm not expecting them to make it out of the groups either, but they have an okay chance at least with this type of team. They have people who know what it takes already to beat OWL level players, especially somebody like Naga and Kelix. They've been doing it for a long time. That's my general consensus and overview of the 7 contenders teams joining the Pro-Am. If you want to learn more, definitely look at Wikipedia and check out some of these guys' gameplay on Overwatch contenders. There's so much of it. You have so much of a sample size to work with if you want to study up and learn more about these guys before the matchups happen. Okay, but what about some general preds? So, when looking at the group stage and the qualifiers for that, I believe that all of the OWL teams will make it out, and we're not going to see any Tier 2 teams, unfortunately. Like I said before, if there was any chance for a Tier 2 team to make it out, I feel like there's a good chance for the Saints out of Group B. Valiant and Vegas are ripe for the taking, and if they could maybe take advantage of London and get hot at the right time, they could beat them and make it on through. Maybe only have 1 loss out of the groups. It's very much possible, but everyone else, I'm not too sure. Maybe someone out of Group C. Maybe someone out of Group D if they're lucky, but I'm not expecting much. I'm excited to watch these Tier 2 teams at all. There's a lot of solid, talented players, both guys trying to make a comeback and a career for themselves in general for the first time, but they don't really have what it takes, I feel like. Now, for all I know, maybe some of these OWL teams aren't all that prepared. It's something to keep in mind. Maybe they aren't in that great of shape, but just generally what I'd expect is for them to maybe fall short due to the lack of experience and talent. A few teams have a chance, but again, even some of the weaker teams like NYXL, for example, they have talented OWL players that have been competing for championships before, so it's going to be hard to take them down even if they have weaker teammates compared to the past. My one exception to this rule, again, comes in that Group B, because Vegas and the Valiant essentially are Tier 2 teams, so it's not even a fair comparison. I'd like to be proven wrong, but my expectations are not super high. In terms of who I think makes it out of every single group, I'm going with the Shock and Mayhem out of Group A. They just feel like the strongest two. Maybe the Titans sneak up on us. I doubt it, though. Group B, I'm just sticking with Atlanta and London. Saints have a small chance, but I don't know if they get past London. Group C, I'm going with Boston and the LA Gladiators. I feel like they're the 2 strongest teams there. Kind of hard to go against them. And in Group D, the Houston Outlaws and Toronto Defiant feel like the clear-cut favorites. Okay, but will any of the Tier 2 teams get close or pull off any upsets against OWL teams? Well, for me, I'm going to say, well, mostly no. I think that definitely the Saints will take down, bare minimum, the Eternal or Valiant, if not both. Honestly, I think they beat both of them. I think they're better than both. Maybe that's just me. Aside from that, maybe, just maybe, we see Timeless or Trick Room beat Vancouver. I could see that happening. Group D, I'm kind of expecting either Redbird or Twisted Minds to pull off a win against NYXL. I don't know about both of them, but I think one of them might get the upper hand because New York don't feel all that strong. Both of these teams are really good. Two of the better Tier 2 teams in this tournament, so you never know what could happen there. I want to say a Tier 2 team can get out of the groups. I feel like it's possible, but I just don't have it in me to say it will happen. I personally just don't see it. It's hard to see any of them going like 3-1, 4-0. It's just not realistic to me. Maybe like one team can do it. Again, Maryville, there's a solid chance they could. The Saints have it in them if they can overcome London. Okay, but who do I think wins in the single elimination tournament? Well, I'm gonna go with the Atlanta Reign. I've been talking a lot about the Shock and how excited I am for them. But right now, I'm kind of riding the Atlanta hype train. Maybe I'm being a Scrimbucks Andy, but I really liked what I've seen from the league scrims. And right now, it seems like double flex support is really strong, and that works really well with them with Fielder and Vigilante. That's just a ridiculous combo. Donghack seems like he's fitting in well as the tank player there alongside Hawk. Lip is still as insane as ever. Stalker's underrated. I just like how that team is playing. I like the vibes. I think they're playing with a lot of confidence. Gator's coaching them well. So I'm going to say they take this thing home. And that leaves us with an Atlanta versus San Francisco Shock Grand Finals, which would be pretty epic, but I actually don't think this game is going to be all that close. I feel like at this point, the Reign will have so much confidence gained, and the Shock will maybe have struggled a bit more to make it through here. So Reign just roll on through with their confident DPS play, the meta going their way. This is their time to shine. I'm excited to see what they've got. I think they're going to come out of the gates running and show us why they are determined to win it all this year. And that's pretty much going to do it, ladies and gentlemen. Those are my predictions. That's my preview, and that's my little guide on everything you should be looking out for the Western Pro-Am tomorrow. Hopefully you learned something new from it, and if you're excited, be sure to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new, and let me know what your preds are down in the comments below. Do you have any upsets? Do you think any contenders teams make it out of the group stage? Let me know all your thoughts down below. And until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.